Welcome to the Utility Security Podcast, your command center for all things utility security. From power plant warriors to grid guardians, and even curious citizens, this podcast is your essential briefing on keeping up to date with knowledge and insights for securing our nation's utilities. Expert intel through interviews with security chiefs, tech wizards, and policy shapers. Tune in as we explore the latest vulnerabilities, industry best practices, and inspiring stories of resilience from the frontline heroes keeping our grids secure.
Welcome, everybody, to Utility Security Podcast. I'm really excited about today's episode. We have a fantastic expert, somebody who has a depth of knowledge about security, Ross Falisi, and he's with VRP Group, which is a company that offers security services, training, consulting, and logistical support here in the U.S. and abroad, and namely for utility organizations. What is also exciting about this episode is that it's hitting at a very timely point of the year as disasters of weather-related disasters are certainly going to increase with hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, and things like that, and things that are certainly on the scope of things that can impact utilities and create scenarios where utilities will need to send teams to rebuild and respond to disaster. So welcome, Russ. Happy to have you here today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
So let's go ahead and get into some topics related to disaster response. First, as I mentioned, that we're in that kind of peak period that's starting to begin, and utilities right now, if they don't already have a response plan that's thoughtful and comprehensive and strategic, they ought to start thinking about one and make sure that they get that in place. So, can you share with our listeners some insights that you've gained from your efforts in disaster response and the lessons learned from those experiences?
Well, I think you kind of hit it right on the head. The old saying that proper preparation prevents piss poor performance is without a doubt, it hits home right here. I mean, you have to prepare and be ready for, we're in the business of planning for the worst and hoping for the best. And we have got to get ahead of the curve. That being said, even the best laid plans are nothing but a point of deviation. So you have to understand that you have a plan, but you got to be able to adapt and improvise, and the situation is going to dictate what you have to do. So being able to improvise and making sure that you're adapting to the situation around you is very, very important. So making sure that all those things are in place prior to any type of even a hint of some type of, whether it's weather related or terrorist related or anything like that, you have to have that plan in place, because if you don't have a point of deviation, we're just kind of wandering aimlessly.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the terrorist threat. I mean, that along with weather and things that happen by nature, certainly the threats for utilities, especially, on the rise across the board, whether cyber or physical. I want to kind of do a shameless plug and talk about an article that you wrote for utility security that's out on our website, utilitysecurity.com. It's fantastic. A fantastic article. Really appreciate you contributing it, and really lays out some key points on what to do and how to have a great plan. But I wanted to kind of bring up something you brought up in the beginning of the article, which I thought was a pretty novel concept, the concept of Semper Gumby. So you could talk a little bit more about that with our listeners.
Yeah, so that's kind of a play on Marine Corps' the Semper Fi, and in the contractor / operator world, we talk about Semper Gumby being flexible, and it goes back to what I just said about making sure you have a plan, but being able to deviate for that plan. Now, you can deviate, but the key to any disaster response or emergency response is command and control, right? Command and control is everything. The U.S. military being probably the most, well, not probably, definitely the most powerful military in the world, they run between a 7 and 10 to 1 of support service to actually boots on the ground or combatants.
Wow.
So you think about that. Now, I'm not going to tell you we're in a war situation, but we're in a very austere environment. Communications is at a minimal. Resources are at a minimal. So when you look at that, your command control structure, let's just take it for the very best. 1-to-1, if you don't have the amount of command and control for your people in the field, then you can't control what's going on. And your people in command and control, they need to be flexible and adapt to the situation. Your management people that are supervising your field personnel, they need to be flexible and make good decisions. And you guys in the field need to be highly trained, experienced at doing this, and they need to be flexible. And they need to be able to read the situation around them and say, hey, listen, I know the plan is to do X, but X ain't going to work here. We need to do Y, and let's figure out how we can do Y and do that safely to make sure that we're protecting, life, limb, eyesight, and not only protecting the image of the client, but enhancing the image of our client. Because at the end of the day, when we get done, I can only speak for our company. When we walk away, I really don't care if people are saying, hey, VRP Group's Regis division did a great job on the ground, right? What I need them to say is that XYZ power company or XYZ gas company, man, they got that power back on instantly, or they got the gas back up. And, those people were so nice to the community. And being able to be viable and flexible is a key issue to that.
Yeah, so you're kind of referencing, that concept of trying to get the power back up, especially after an event happens. And a lot of line workers from the utility in the area and driving in from all over the place have to come in and set up in camps. And in that article that I referenced earlier, you talked about a pretty important strategy relating to that. When it comes to having alcohol on premises, can you talk more about why, when you have those sort of camp situations, that alcohol should be banned from those areas?
Yeah. So for years, and I'll speak specifically to the power companies, they've all had a no alcohol policy. Wink, wink. We're on paper, but let's not enforce it. Man camps or temporary housing facilities, whatever you want to call them, they become little cities. You have everything that you would have in a typical, urban type environment. You have narcotics, you have prostitution, you have all of the things that you don't want around you. They start to come in and come into these situations. I mean, think about it. These guys and girls getting dragged from their homes, put in these camps, and people in disaster, there's opportunity, right? And the predators, the bad people, or the undesirable people that we don't want in that situation, but if they see opportunity, right? So now you got people trying to get into those camps. So securing those camps properly, not letting anybody in, is a huge issue. But the alcohol specifically is, if you look back at the stats, whether they're sexual assaults, assaults on themselves, even just accidental injuries, 90% of them will come back to intoxicated persons, whether through alcohol or narcotics or any other intoxicants. So it's a bad situation. If you remove that 90%, right, at the end of the day, what are we doing? We're trying to protect safety and security of the people that are trying to bring back power and restore normalcy back to the areas. If you remove that 90%, it's a lot easier to operate on 10% risk than it is to operate on 100% risk.
That's playing some pretty good odds there for sure. Yeah, it's a great strategy. One thing, I just want to kind of tell a little bit of a story here myself, that when we were researching and trying to launch Utility Security magazine, we've been involved in utilities with the safety publication and the fleet publication for 2 decades now, and have the ability to talk to a lot of folks out who work for utilities. And the one shocking thing I learned when just having conversations about security is when I asked, hey, have you ever had a gun pulled on you by the general public? And the amount of times I've heard that come back is yes, it's happened several times. I've been shot at, things like that. In these disaster zones, one story I have heard is, customers get angry, right? That their electric's not turned on fast enough, or their gas is not turned on fast enough, and they come out and they get aggressive and confrontational. So from a security perspective, what sort of strategies do you recommend keep line workers and other crews out there safe with the general public perhaps angered, and then just the general sort of opportunity of predators kind of that might come in and want to take advantage of weaker areas?
Yeah, and 100% I agree with what you just said. People are upset, but we have to understand, in the most 99.9% of these situations, the confrontations that are going on between the general public who do not have that power, and the linemen, the treemen, or even your security personnel, they're not personal. And you can't take them as personal. They're not mad at the lineman. They're mad at the situation, right? Some person just worked their whole week, went out and bought food for the week, and stretching their dollar as far as it can go. Now their power's out. All their food is gone. They're trying to get up and go to work because they got to feed their family. They're not mad at you. They're mad at the situation. So the number one thing that needs to be done is you need to have people there that are trained and properly understand how to de-escalate a situation. We recently, again, I can speak for our company. We recently were called in on a company that they were in a bad way. They were in a really, really bad way after a disaster. And we had two of our senior managers show up. We actually got the phone call on a Friday night. I had them in the company's office at 6 o'clock the next morning. And one of their PR people came out, and they looked over and they looked at our guys and they said, "Man, we expected you to be in here with all black and big guns." And, our guys are like, "For what?" If I got to get that road with you, if you really want to take it down that road, yeah, we'll get that road with you. I don't mind doing it. All right. But why? Why? Don't ever use don't ever use force and compulsion when you can use tact. So what are we trying to do? As I said earlier, right? I'm trying to not only protect, but enhance the image of the client. So the simple thing of having your security guys walk over and just talk to the people that are trained in how to talk to them. In this situation, we knew the neighborhoods, we knew the neighborhoods that they were in. And one of the things that we could tell in those neighborhoods from experience is usually the matriarch of the neighborhood. So what we did is we just located who the matriarchs in those neighborhoods were, took the dang branches out of their driveway for them. So now you have this woman standing out there telling these gangbangers, these gangbangers are all tough until grandma comes out there and tells them, "I wiped your butt, I'll kick it," right? So let's leave these people alone. And all of a sudden what happens? We took that same situation that was a bad situation, and now the community's working for the power company going, "Leave these men alone, leave these women alone, let them get their job done so I get my power back. Mind your business." So that's a huge part. It's having the right people on the ground that are trained and understand the situation, can evaluate the situation. Now, I'll go back. If you've got to get down, we go back to the terrorist situation. I'm not going to play that if we're dealing with terrorists, right? That's a ton of guns and mean guys, right? That's it.
Yeah.
We're not going to start talking to those people. They're here to kill you, and you got to do what you got to do to protect the lives of the American citizens. But in those situations, they're American citizens. Treat them with the respect they deserve. So try talking to them, and 99% of the times you can get through that way.
Wow, some great insights there. You kind of want to build off of what your response was there, and some things you brought up at the beginning of the interview when we're talking about the concept of who to choose and what to choose for outsourcing security providers. Can you talk more about some of the best practices utilities should consider when employing security in disaster response scenarios? What type of security? You mentioned chain of command. Maybe you could dive a little deeper into that concept a little bit more as well.
So, being very open. Let's. The word security covers everything from a guy in a t-shirt at a concert up to the most elite guys protecting the president of the United States, right? And everything in between. And there's a place for all of it. But what happens is we start to put round pegs in square holes. All right. You're taking an austere environment. You're taking people who are displaced, and you're putting people out there. If they're not trained and they don't have the proper support from the company itself, who's highly experienced in doing this type of work, it's a recipe for disaster. So let's talk about like security guard companies. They're very good at what they do, which is standing at a gate somewhere, taking notes on who's coming in and things like that. But you'll see many of the security guard companies try to jump into the disaster response thing. Well, first of all, they've still got to man those same posts that they were manning every day, right? So from personnel-wise, they're stretching as far as they can go. The big secret with disaster response is it's a 365-day-a-year job. I mean, I literally talk to my guys on Christmas, and I'll ask them, hey, Merry Christmas, tell your wife I said all the best, hug the kids. By the way, did you take care of X, Y, and Z? And it's a 365-day-a-year job. So when you're getting into that, having a company that does disaster response and has the proper policy procedures, the infrastructure, the technology to put out there, because remember, again, going back to what I said earlier, we don't have communications. I mean, there's times where we're literally going back to, you drive here, write these notes down, get that piece of paper, and drive to the next guy, because that's how you have to communicate until we can get cloud back. So, you want to hire a company that's experts in this. The days of just putting somebody out there, right? Let's go back to what I said before. Let's just go 1-to-1 on your management versus your people in the field, right? You've got to have people. You can't have Jenny sitting there with a yellow pad handling post assignments and making up. And who's going to gather all the intel from the field? Who's going to evaluate what you got? You have to evaluate, right? You have to. They have to go out. You have to evaluate. You have to mitigate all of the risks that are coming through the door. So who's going to formulate the plan to mitigate those risks? All these things need to be thought about. So hiring the proper company and vetting that company, vet them. There's a million guys running around out there that have a business card and a computer, and they would make you think that they're a big company. Find out who it is, vet them. Pull their D&Bs, talk to the companies that they work with, check their financials, look at who they are and see who they are before you actually say, hey, listen, I'm going to trust you with the life, limb, eyesight, the reputation of our company. Don't just put somebody out that you want to trust that with, because something could destroy you and something could neutralize. And there's a few companies out there that'll actually enhance the reputation of. From my point of view, I'm always going to hire the guy that's going to enhance my reputation.
That's a great point that you brought up about the reputation being just a big part of the consideration. If something that goes wrong or sideways, become a headline story very quickly and look really bad. Staying on this topic a bit, and something you referenced in the article that we have on the website is the concept of hiring off-duty police officers for security. It's something that sounds great on paper, right? I mean, they have a lot of experience de-escalating, working with general public, being out there in those spaces, but it does come with some downsides, as you said in your article. Can you talk more about those downsides?
Well, listen, I started my career, I spent my first 20 years in public service, and every single one of the guys that work for us have. But let's just start with the thing. If you're going to hire an off-duty law enforcement officer, where's your command control structure? What's his support? You're just going to stick a guy out there and say, okay, there's a guy out here, he's going to protect this. Well, let's take that again, like you said, that, it looks good on paper. Well, first of all, we're not in a time, when I started, actually, I just hit my 40th anniversary yesterday when I became a police officer in New York City, and then left to go to the state police, fortunately. Those days, there was respect for law enforcement. People respected it. Now, there's no respect for law enforcement. They're confrontational. So you're bringing people in that want to confront this police officer just because he's a police officer. So that's a situation you got to deal with. Now, think about it from the officer side. This is a guy who just may have worked 8, 10, 12 hours. He's working extra money. He's trying to feed his family. He's trying to make his bills, right? So now you're bringing him in. First of all, we're getting into situations where how much can you actually do, right? How many hours do you actually work and take? Second question is, who does he work for? You may be paying him, but legally, he's responsible to the public. He cannot. So, for example, we have a lay-down yard. You've got millions of dollars worth of equipment in there, and there's a traffic accident down the road. By law, he has to go to that traffic accident. Period. Who's protecting the assets that you just had? We talk about it. We're very CIA heavy in our advisory board, and so we have the unique ability to look at things as predators, not only as protectors, right? And I could tell you from a predator side of view, I would just create a diversionary tactic. If I want that down there, I'd have 2 guys go down there and start acting like they're going to get in a fight, whatever they're going to do. Go in, get what I want, and walk out. because they have no responsibility to you. They have to go to their responsibility, which is the public, right? They have to take care of that. Versus hiring the proper firm, as I said before, to do what you got to do is, hey, listen, if we can help out, we're going to help out. Absolutely. We're going to do everything we can to help out the public. But our primary responsibility is to our client, right? That's what we have to do. Going back to protect life, limb, and assets, physical assets, and not only protecting, but enhancing the reputation of the client. So yes, I love them. And if you take that same officer, take that same exact officer, bring him in, give him some training with the proper company that knows how to bring him in and bring in the training, probably do a great job for you. But you take him out of that uniform and put him out there with a company. Now who's he responsible? He's got a chain of command. He's got actually policies and procedures. He's got standard operating procedures. He's got post orders. And take him out of that uniform, guess what? He's not responsible to the general public at this point. So now he's responsible to who? He's responsible to his employer, who's actually ultimately responsible to who? Our company that hired you.
Wow. Great insights there, Russ. I love talking with you. Always a wealth of information. Before we wrap up today, one final question. Any other sort of security considerations or strategies that you want to tell our listeners about that we didn't talk about today?
Well, as I said, the biggest secret is that it's a 365-day year job. It really is. Having the amount of support to get what needs to be done in a disaster situation it'd be overwhelming for most companies. For the companies that do it, they got it down. And we recently had one of the major power companies in the U.S. When we set up, we'll have a tactical operations center that's nowhere near the site, and then we'll have command posts actually within the disaster area. And this was a big company who has a very, very big disaster response division, and they do have security at the table, which is a huge one. Bringing security into all the preseason meetings for these power companies. And they walked into our command post, and they were kind of taken back about the amount of technology and boards and electronics and things that were going on, and how we were real time from Florida out to this command post. Everything's real time, and all the technology that was involved. And they're like, we don't have this. And I'm like, we probably have it at your disaster response level. He goes, I don't know. He goes, but we don't have it in the security division. So, having to get someone in there and having them being able to communicate with and directly to, and the point I want to get to is having a direct line between the contract company you bring in and to the security people. And empower, if you bring in the right company, they'll gain your trust, and they'll have them empower, because you get a guy who says, hey, listen, I don't care about your drinking rules. Well, that guy just needs to go home, right? So, and going back to what I said earlier about the community, we could do the same thing with the linemen, the tree guys, etc. We learned years ago, never put the tree guys and the linemen in the same man camp. That's bad. Okay, you got the linemen mostly they're union guys. The tree guys are a lot of Latin Americans, and they're non-union. Now you got a problem, because these guys want to fight to begin with. Now you got. All you have to do, you got fertilizer, you got diesel fuel. What do you got to do? Add spark, i.e. alcohol. What do you got? You got a problem, right? You got a big problem. Yeah. So being able to get ahead of a lot of those things, and being able to have your security team in the field have direct access to senior security personnel who have direct access to a storm boss or a VP that could say, hey, listen, we're going to send Johnny home, or we're going to send the whole company home. I've seen contract companies, say, hey, listen, they just don't want to play. They want to do what they want to do, and they don't want to abide by the rules. Send them home. And like everything, if you send one home, you know what's going to happen? You go home and tell mom you were making X amount of dollars a day. I mean, those guys paid very well. And all of a sudden you got thrown out of there because you wanted to get drunk. If mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy, right?
Very true. Yeah. Thanks so much for your time today, Ross. Really appreciate it. Can you tell our listeners more about how they can get in touch with you if they want to talk more about security?
Yeah. So the website is vrpgroup.com. Just as it sounds, Victor Romeo Papa group.com. You can get on there. You can send an email to corporate@VRP Group, or you can call the office at 800-795-6440. If we don't answer the phone, we will get back to you. My big thing is, if I don't have an answer for you, I'll find someone to get an answer for you. we have zero problems just talking to you and saying, hey, if you say this problem, try this, try that. Let me get somebody on the phone to help you. So we're not only here to provide the actual service. We're here to help you. If you have some questions, we'd be honored to help you out.
Thanks, Ross Falisi from VRP Group, and thank you to all of our listeners for listening to this podcast. Stay tuned. Make sure you're subscribed to our newsletters and our magazine. And until next time, stay safe and secure.
Don't forget to visit our website at utilitysecurity.com for exclusive intel, resources, and a community of fellow utility security professionals. Stay safe, stay informed, and stay tuned for your next mission briefing.
The views, information, and opinions expressed during this podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Utility Business Media and its employees. It is strongly recommended that you discuss any actions or policies